when we found out how many weeks I looked back. It was like pretty much I got impregnated like the week that we moved into the house. So pretty sure he was conceived on the floor. So, and then, when I found out I was pregnant, the first like few months in the house, like everything was great. It was like honeymoon. We were so excited to be around each other. And there was a lot of promises on like what our life was going to be like. Like we were going to go camping like every other weekend. We were going to go, do all these fun things. And then the excuses, oh, I gotta work. Oh, I have this. He had a job and he had his own business, and that was always the excuse. And there's always these problems around work and lots of problems around that. So I would be like, okay, do you want me to help you like offer a solution, help you through this? And it just got to this point where like anytime I brought up like, hey, my needs aren't being met, or I need money to we split everything 50-50. I need you to pay your half of the bills or whatever. There was always some excuse, or the conversation would switch back to work and his challenges at work and how he's not getting his projects done or whatever. And he doesn't have it yet. He'll get it to me when we have it. And I managed all the finances. So it got to the point where I started paying all the bills up front and just waiting for him to reimburse me. And this was while I was on maternity leave too with my son. And I took a maternity leave from like my job at a remote job from home. But then I got my real estate license out here. So I'm like dual licensed in 2 states. I got my real estate license right before I had my son, because I just felt like God was telling me, you need to do this. And I'm so glad that I did, because that was the only way I was able to like carry that financial burden. I had a really good year in real estate that year. And so I was able, but it was still stressful, but it was just like, yeah. And
I'm just your daughter also. And then now you have another child.
Yeah. And, wasn't getting any child support from my daughter's dad. And then he died. So now I'm never going to get any. And then, yeah, it was too much. And I just felt like he wasn't taking care of his family. And whenever I would bring that up, I'm trying to genuinely be vulnerable and express like, I feel like you're not doing your part. Then it was an attack on his manhood. And, like the tone when he would reiterate what I said to him would change. And it was always a deflection. And it was like, if I'm saying like, hey, I feel like this need isn't being met. Well, what about my needs? And the arguments were just exhausting. And, I never really talked to my family about relationships before, because like the little girl in me, I wasn't allowed to date in high school. So it was like, I wouldn't talk to my stepdad about my relationships. But then I started like reaching out to like the men in my life, like my stepdad and my grandfather, just kind of like talking to them. And, they have genuine interest in, my life being okay. And they're like, these are not good signs. Like, you're eventually going to get fed up and you'll leave, but like, you'll make that decision on your own. And I'm like, they're probably right. He was also asking me to give up my comedy before I moved out there.
That's never good.
Yeah. So I didn't do anything.
Not paying the bills. I just feel like anything outside of what pays the bills is still something for me.
Yeah.
You're asking me to I'm already doing what is mandatory for survival. Mm-hmm. And now you don't want me to have the one thing that is mandatory for my mental and emotional survival outside of the physical and financial that I'm having to do. So that's always going to be a red flag for me. The minute you mention my comedy, I'm done.
Yeah.
Because I need it for me. I don't do this for the audience. Of course it helps them too, but that's where I get to be alone. I don't have my kids. Well, sometimes I do, but yeah. I've had to take them to the club with me before, but it's just for me. So, and you don't have to take, when I was married, I don't have to take my husband. I'm at work.
Yeah.
This has to be fun work.
Yeah.
So you're asking me to give up, and what could also be very lucrative, which is the goal. So you don't have to go to a 9-to-5. This becomes lucrative and you work 2 or 3 days a week and you're done.
Yeah. Especially if it's your passion, you're going to make money doing it.
Absolutely.
And so that was just crazy. And the only reason why I agreed to it was because, I'm moving back to my hometown. It's a little bit smaller. And I'm like, well, his big thing was like he didn't want me out at night and this is where I noticed the fear mongering, because he would start sharing these stories with me on social media about things that were happening to people out in public. He's like, this is why I don't go out to eat. This is why I don't do this. If I mentioned like a restaurant I wanted to go to, he'd be like, don't go there. They're rat infested. Like
wait, you guys are not even going on dates?
No, girl, the whole time we were together for 2 years, we went on 4 dates. And 3 of them I initiated. I planned. There was only like one time where he was like, I'm going to take you to breakfast today. So like nothing on our anniversary. Like I talked him into going out on our anniversary, and then he complained the whole time we were there. And we went on a walk afterwards, and he was on his phone talking to one of his buddies like the whole time we were on the walk. And then our second anniversary was the day when I told him I didn't want to be together anymore. And
how did he take that? Or was he kind of expecting it?
No, he was upset, and he was like, you can't just rip apart people's lives like this. And I'm like, excuse me?
The one whose life has already been ripped apart by moving here and having to do everything myself.
Yeah. So he was like, well, we'll figure out this and that and that. And I'm like, okay. So I'm like planning my exit strategy, but it's taken me a while. Real estate started slowing down, and he just starts acting like everything is normal. But like, just being distant or whatever. And so then when I finally got situated, let me tell you what happened that made me realize that when it finally clicked that I have to get out. Okay. So it was when I found out that what happened with my daughter's dad. So I found out I took my daughter to the coast for the weekend because, we didn't get to celebrate her birthday because I was sick. So we went out later, like a couple weeks later. And while I was driving out to the coast, I started getting all these text messages and hearing about the story. And so, I told her while we were on the beach, I wanted to get her in a serene place and, tell her. And then I told my most recent ex about what happened, and he was like very supportive, and we're like talking on the phone, and he was like, help me see a lot of the things that I see now about the situation. And it was just like nice to have the support. And then the next day when we got back home, he was working, but he was talking to me on the phone like all day while he was working. And I was like, will you just like come home? Like, I just want to like spend time with you. And he wouldn't come home, but he was like, trying to be there for me over the phone, I guess. So my daughter finally like goes to sleep, and I'm like getting ready to go to bed. I'm like in the shower, and he comes home, and he's like eating food out of this bowl, and he's like chewing all like being like obnoxious. Yeah. And he comes into the room, and I'm like getting ready to go to bed, and he's like, so is there anything else you want to talk about? And I said, no. I'm really just emotionally exhausted. I need to get some rest. Oh, okay. And he like walks out, and then I turn off the light and lay down, and then he comes back in, turns on the light, sits on the bed, and he's like, so why'd you block me on Instagram?
So his concern is not that your daughter has lost her father. It's Instagram. And
yeah.
why he's blocked.
Yeah.
Did he even attempt to go to comfort her at any point?
Nope. His interactions with my daughter was very limited, and I started, and it started getting to me because my daughter was like, I don't think he likes me. He's never here. And then like at one point, she's talking to her school counselor, and, because he would come home late almost every night when she was already in bed and the kids were already in bed. And that's when he would start his arguments or his disagreements with me, was when the kids were asleep.
What are his interactions with his own son?
I don't know. Or you mean like my son?
Yeah.
Yeah, he has 2 older kids. So
okay.
So like, yeah, again, like I would try to keep our son up late so he could interact with him when he would get home, but he would come home so late to the point where we're all asleep. And then he would get like pass out on the couch, sleep 4 hours. And then like, as soon as he wakes up, he would leave. So, and that was one of my issues I had with him was like, you just get up and you leave. You don't say goodbye. You don't say, good morning. And it makes me feel like you don't love me when you do that. You come and go. Like I work from home and he would like come home in the middle of the day to like go grab something or whatever. And he wouldn't even come into my office and say, "Hey babe, I hope you're having a great day. Love you. Bye." He would just come and go, come and go. And it just made me feel like I was a roommate, you know?
Now, was he this way before you moved and you just paid less attention because you weren't in the same house? Or was it kind of like a switch
It was a
once he got you
switch.
there?
It was a switch.
That seems to be a common theme. A lot of times men say, "Well, you knew." And I'm like, no, there are
No.
people that are very good that do this. They've been doing it for years and they know how to get you. And right when they've gotten accomplished everything they want, they know how to turn it off. And you
Yeah.
are blindsided. Because you may have red flags of other behaviors, but when it comes to that, you can have no idea.
Yeah. What I started to notice is like he would come home and he'd be so excited to see me. Like we were like, "Oh my God," we were cuddling and kissing and all this stuff. And then like one day he came home and he was in a bad mood. And I'm like, "Oh, is everything okay?" And then like he would, explain to me. And then it was like this trend. And so I kind of stopped asking. And then I would just try to give him space because, he was really into music. And so he would like go down in his area. He had his own little area with his like studio stuff. And so he would go and he would make music. And I'm like, okay, like trying to give him some space to like decompress. But it was also hard because I've been home with the baby all day. And it's like, can you hold the baby so I could take a shower, And so it got to the point when he would come home and like he would walk right past us, not say anything, go straight into the kitchen. So we would just kind of be like, all right, like I guess we were not talking. And even like my daughter's picking up on this energy. And then like when we started talking about our issues, he's like, "Well, I'm tired of coming home and feeling this energy of, oh no, he's home." And I'm like, that's not what that is. That's us trying to give you space because you come home in a bad mood every day. And so everything would just keep getting flipped. And I asked multiple times, like, if, will you go to counseling with me? Because I was in therapy. And he was like, "No, I'm not going to do that." I'm like, "Okay, well, will you do some exercises with me that my therapist like suggested that we can do to work on communication?" He's like, "Oh yeah, totally." And then he would never do it. So I remember one time we were talking about his ex-wife because he would bring up kind of like what he went through with his ex-wife and things that he went through with his older kids. And so he told me that when things got bad between him and his ex-wife, that she started going to marriage counseling without him. And he's like, "That's not marriage counseling." And I'm like, "I could understand that." And I was like, "Did she ever ask you to go with her?" And he said, "No." I'm like, "If she would have asked you, would you have gone?" And he was like, "Absolutely." And I'm like, thinking in my head, like, I've asked you multiple times to go. You would have gone to save the relationship with your ex-wife, but you won't go to save our relationship. So that was like, all right, I'm done. But to get back to, sorry, what I was talking about before, that night when I found out about my daughter's dad, he brought up Instagram, why I blocked him. I had blocked him previously on there because he would get mad at me for posting pictures of our son. And my Instagram page was private. It was on my private page. And I'm like, I have family that lives across the country, all over. And this is how I share pictures with him. He's like, "Oh, well, I just don't understand why you send them pictures, but you don't send me pictures." Why do I need to send you pictures of our son? You're with him. You live here.
Take your own pictures.
So I got tired of him attacking me, bullying me on Instagram. And so I blocked him. And then I eventually unblocked him, but I blocked him from my stories. And so I think he discovered that he was blocked from my stories and he thought I blocked him again, but he brought that up as an issue. And I was like, "Why are you bringing this up when I'm going through like a traumatic grieving process right now? All I want to do is sleep." And he wouldn't let me sleep. He just sat in the room and kept this circular argument that was going nowhere for almost 2-3 hours. And the whole time I was just in my head, I was like, I have to get out. I have to get out. I have to get out. So I was trying to get out, and it took me a while. But then there was at one point, because my goal was like, I was having a really hard time of like letting go of the idea of being a homeowner. I worked so hard to be a homeowner. And I was like, I just want to save enough money so I can buy like a small condo and live in that. So then once we sell our house or whatever, then I could like rent out the condo and then buy like a real house for like me and my kids. And that was my goal. That's what I wanted to do. Because I was really worried about like my credit getting ruined, like him not wanting to sell the house, like all those things, you know? And so, and I looked into renting and I was just like, oh my God, I don't want to spend all this money and just have it being thrown away. But our house is a very beautiful home. It's like a mid-century modern home. It was a custom built. We're like the third owners of it. And it just needed a little bit of TLC. So I did a lot of painting and like decorating, made it look really beautiful. And our shower in the master bathroom was like original tile, and the grout was like really gross. And he works a lot in like car stuff. So like his oil from like working in cars would get like, it was just so gross. And I'm like, I want to get the shower redone. And of course, he never wants to pay to get anything repaired. Most of the stuff that I did on the house, I paid for myself. But I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll just get it regrouted. And I looked into this company and I said, hey, I'm going to have this guy come out and give us a quote on getting it regrouted, like steamed and regrouted and stuff. So he had this weird thing about whenever, like, I was like, let's have a landscaper come, because he wasn't taking care of the landscaping. So I hired this guy to come through and look at the landscaping. And when he saw that there was a man on our property on the cameras, he'd be like, who was that? I don't want you making deals with men until I shake them in the hand and look them in the eye. And I'm like, I can understand like you being protective of us in the house, but that seems like some ego shit, you know?
Absolutely.
So, and then he was like, no, I'll take care of the landscaping or whatever. And I had already like paid for them to come, and then they came and they did the landscaping. And he was like, I don't know why I was tripping. They did such a good job. I should have, you know, and I'm just like, what the fuck is happening? So this guy comes to the house to look at our shower over the weekend or whatever. And then my ex gets back from work. We're sitting on the couch. The next day is the 1st, right? So I'm asking him about mortgage money. I'm like, do you have money for your half of the bills? The mortgage is due tomorrow. And he's like, yeah, I already sent it to you. And he was like giving me attitude about it. He's like, I already put it in the joint account. And I'm like, oh, okay. Because every time he switches up how he gets, like sometimes he'll give me cash. Sometimes he'll put it in the joint account that I opened for home expenses, or sometimes he'll Zelle it to me. And he doesn't communicate with me when he does it. Usually it's after I ask him. So he's like, I already put it in the account. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I go on my phone to look. He's like, oh, what? You don't believe me? I'm like, I'm just checking it so I could pay the mortgage. And I look, and he only gave me half the mortgage. He didn't give me the rest of the bills that I already paid. And so I'm like, okay, you gave me half the mortgage, but I need X amount of dollars for the rest of the bills. He's like, okay, well, I'll send that right now. And then he gets on his phone and he goes, who was that? Switches it up. Who was that guy that came to the
argument to avoid?
And I said, that was, he was like, oh, okay. How much did he quote you? And he said he would do it for like $400 or something like that. And he was like, oh, so are you going to do it? And I'm like, yeah, I think it's super reasonable. And he's like, oh, okay. Well, he said something smart, like, thank you for consulting with me on that. And I was like, yeah, sure. No problem. And he's like, I was being sarcastic. And I'm like, why are you being sarcastic? And he's like, you just agreed on a price? I'm like, well, are you going to pay for it too? I mean, I was planning on just paying for this on my own. I have no problem paying for it. Well, I could have got one of my friends to do it for cheaper. I'm like, you have friends that specialize in this service? He's like, oh, yeah, sure. And then I'm like, and so I called him out, because towards this point in the relationship, my phone is listening to all these conversations. So every time I open up my Instagram,
you get an ad.
I'm getting ads Dr. Romney talking about narcissistic abuse, psychological abuse. And I'm like, oh, this is what's happening, you know? So I called him out and I said, I said something about what you're doing is emotional abuse or whatever. And he was like, I could say the same thing about you. And I was like, all right.
That's the kids again, emotional abuse, to turn it around. That's manipulation.
Yeah.
Gaslighting.
So like, yes. So I was like, okay, the kids are asleep. I'm going to leave the house for a little while. And I went on a drive and all these emotions were coming up and I was just like starting to cry. I'm like, I have to get out. And I was feeling guilt because it's like, I put my daughter in this situation. I'm feeling guilt because I'm breaking up a family. I'm going through all these things. And I went to my aunt's house and I just cried. And I was like, I got to get out. I got to get out. She's like, just rent a place. She's like, just rent a place. I know you don't want to, just go rent a place. And so the next day I took the day off work and I went and looked at, when my son was asleep, my daughter was home. I went and I looked at the apartment. I went and looked at this one I looked at before. Before it was like $2,300 a month or something like that, which is what I didn't want to pay because I wanted to pay like exactly what I was paying on my mortgage or less. And I went back and I looked at this place and I got in for like $800 or $1,800 a month. And I looked at like 3 different units and I was like, like they're nice, but I don't really know. And then I go back into the leasing office and they're like, I noticed that there was a unit open by the swimming pool. And I was like, oh, can I look at that? And I go and I look at it and the placement of the apartment, it was like so gorgeous because I have like a view of like our big Butte inner city that is like, you know, a monument. And I have like an awesome view of the hills and it's just so peaceful. And it's like, no one could see into my apartment. And I was just like, this is the one. And I just felt so much peace. And I was like, I'm doing it. Right. So I was like, I want it. I put down the money. I got boxes. I started packing up my stuff. And then he came home and he was like, you know, you're completely blindsiding me on this, right? I'm like, I told you like 3, 4, 5 months ago that I was done. So no, this wasn't blindsided. And then like while I was packing, just the whole time, he was just like picking fights with me. And I was just trying to like go along with everything that he was saying. And I was like, I'm sorry. Like, you need someone stronger than me. I can't do it. And then he started like weaponizing scripture and was like quoting all these Bible quotes and all this stuff. And like, we come from like, you know, a Christian family. And I'm just like, I was bawling my eyes out, just trying to agree with everything they was saying to get him to stop. And he just kept going and kept going and kept going. And then the day that I moved out, I had my cousins come and help. He was scheduled to work, but he took the day off work and didn't tell me. And then he was there dictating my cousins on how to move everything, touching all my shit. I just didn't want him there. He started like taking stuff and putting it on the patio. So it was like he was putting me out. And then it just got worse from there. So then he was like, just let me know like what you want to do with like child support. I don't want to go through like the state. Just let's agree on amount or whatever. And I was like, yeah, sure. I'm open with that. And he's like, we'll schedule visits on the weekend. And I was like, okay, like he's being cool. Right. So I'm like, well, let me know when you're ready to figure out what you want to do about the house. Like if you want to refinance it and buy it out, or if you want to sell it. Because I sent him, I'm a real estate broker. So I sent him like all these comps on what the house is worth and how much we can make. And because on paper, like neither one of us can afford that payment on our own. So I was like, selling is going to be the only option.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't want to move. And I had a feeling that he was going to be attached to the house because when we were dating, he failed to tell me up until I came up to visit that he had been living in his trailer for 3 years. And he said that he was being discriminated.
He always came to visit you, so you never had an opportunity to see where he was living.
No. And when I came to visit, he like played it off like, oh, we're going to go camping and take my fifth wheel and all this stuff. And then that's when he told me that, because I was like, oh, are we going to go to your place? And that's like, he kind of like brushed it off. And then later when we were driving back from the coast, like he told me that he had been living in his trailer. He's been doing it to save money. He works so much. And like when he's on the road, he stays in a hotel anyway, because his work pays for it. And it makes sense for him to rent, and he's been saving up to buy a house and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, like, I'm an understanding person, so I'm like, thank you for sharing that with me. And he said how people judge him for how he lives, and he kind of made it like, like get me to give him like some pity to be understanding. So yeah, he's attached to the house. It's like a 5-bedroom house, and he's living in it by himself. And so I was like, okay, well, we need to figure out like what we're doing. So I moved out like the beginning of fall, and I was like, okay, like, is 30 days, 60 days enough time for you to figure it out, kind of a thing. So I gave him 60 days to figure it out. And every time I would like try to get him on the phone to like, hey, like, let's talk about X, Y, and Z, he would brush me off. And so then I set a boundary. I was like, if we don't figure everything out by this date, I am going to have to seek meditation services and child support services. So I waited. I filed for child support. I started looking into meditation services. He got served with the child support papers. And I didn't find out till later, but the day that he got served with child support papers, he went and he cleaned out the money that was left in our joint account. And then he changed the locks on the house. So I go to the house because some packages were still getting delivered there and stuff. And there was something that got delivered to the house that I needed for an event that I was having that night. And my son grew into the next set of diapers, and I had a box of diapers in the closet that I wanted. And so I knew he was out of town for work. So I was like, I'll just run by the house and go grab it. Can't get in the house because the locks are changed. So I'm texting him like, hey, I noticed you changed the locks on the house. I'm still a legal and lawful owner. I need to have access to the house. Are you going to be home, or does your dad have a key? Can you let me in? I tried texting his dad, and his dad's always been really nice to me, but his dad is a con artist. Like, I've heard all the stories about him when I was
going to
little.
ask you about his family. Yeah. How are they assisting you in any of this process?
No.
From beginning to end? Are they helping with the kids or anything?
No, the family members I've talked to, like the blood related family members that I've talked to, there's not many that I've talked to. But there's a couple, and it's just like, oh, I'll pray for you. It's nothing. No one's actually helping. So it's whatever. But so I showed up with a locksmith, and I brought my mortgage statement and the deed that shows that I'm the owner on there, because you have to do that for a locksmith to get in. And so he doesn't respond. His dad doesn't respond. I waited 3 hours, showed up with a locksmith. I called the sheriff and everything first to like ask, like, how do I do this? They're like, just call a locksmith, bring, we can't do anything because it's a civil thing, whatever, but this is what you can do. Bring a third party with you. So I brought a third party with me as a witness. So the locksmith gets on his knees. He starts getting into the door. And within 5 minutes, I hear this car come peeling out of nowhere. It's his dad. His dad comes, peels into the driveway, parks diagonal, and I have this all on videotape. And he storms up to the front door, and he's like, you remove those tools out of the door right now. You're breaking and entering. And I said, you're trespassing. This isn't your property. This is my property. He's like, this isn't your property. I have the deed in my hand. I'm holding up like that. This is my property. You don't live here. You're just an investor. You consider this property rented. And like, I've never seen him like this before. He was full on attacking me in my face, pointing at me. And like, at one point, all I could do was like, and this is why the Sonia Massey thing hits me so hard, because I was like, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. And as soon as I started saying that, he started backing up, and he went back to his car and left me alone, because I could feel the fucking demons, like that, the generational demons in that family. I was like, holy shit. And yeah, got it all on videotape. I tried calling the cops to get him removed from the property. And I don't know what was happening that day, but 911 went to fucking voicemail. And I couldn't get an officer out to take a statement until like the next day.
So this must be a really small town.
I mean, it's not really small. Like, our population is like almost 400,000. It's a
Okay.
college town, but there's been a lot of like liberal things that have happened here in the last few years. And so like, you know, people were really trying to defund the police. And at this time of year, it was around the holidays too. There was a lot going on, and there was so many calls that day. Like I learned later that they had so many calls that they had to respond to like the most. And I'm like, I was scared that he was going to hurt me.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm so glad that my kids weren't with me. But that was when I realized like how deep like the psychological abuse was, because he was straight up gaslighting me on my own property, and like his rage. I saw that in my ex all those times that we had arguments, and I'm like, oh, this is passed down, you know. And it just got worse from there. So I ended up having to get a lawyer. Then that's when like all the lies started. You know, my lawyer would forward me a letter from his lawyer, and his lawyer would be like, oh, your client is degrading my client and her comedy performances. I hadn't even never talked about him on stage, because I started doing as soon as I moved out. It was crazy. As soon as I moved out, the comedy floodgates opened. My comedy friends were hitting me up out of nowhere, like, how are you? Are you still doing comedy? Are you still doing this? I started doing this comedy show at one of my friends' clubs. And then I was like, all right, like I always wanted to open a comedy club. And every time I talked to him about that, I was like, I think I need to do it here in my hometown. And he would just be like, oh yeah, I mean, that all sounds nice. But then he would like always try to talk me out of it. So after I got out of that relationship, I was like, there's no holding back on my goals anymore. I'm going all in on what I want to do. And so he saw that, you know, heard through the grapevine that I was working on, like, I'm going to open up a comedy club. I'm doing comedy again. So then he started accusing me of slander and all these things, and just started making up all these lies, and then said that the reason why I left him was because I was fucking his uncle and like all this stuff. And like, we finally settled recently. Like, we didn't go to trial, but we settled on all the things that we agreed on, and he's still not living up to his end of the settlement. And so I'm going to have to go back to court and like try to enforce yeah. So it's not even over yet. and it won't
more
be.
expenses that you're going to have to incur to go back. Personally,
this is all allegedly. This is all allegedly.
Of course, allegedly. But personally, in your situation, whatever we agreed upon, it's over now. Now I want everything, because you've given so many opportunities for grace.
Yeah.
You did not have to, and definitely did not need to.
Yeah. And I really try not to let my ego take over. Like, I just want what's fair. I just want my half of the equity out of the house. I want reasonable child support so I could pay for childcare, because he's with me all the time. And he was fighting me on like, oh, well, I'll give you back like the offers that I was getting. It was like, oh, I'll give you back your down payment, but that's it. What? Why? How was that logical in your own right mind? So now you're trying to fuck me over while you're telling your whole family that I'm a gold digger. He told family members, and of course, this is all hearsay because I didn't hear it from him directly, but I heard it through other people. He was telling people that the house that I owned in Arizona wasn't even mine. It was his, and he was letting me live there. Like, just crazy stuff.
Has he ever lived in Arizona?
No.
Did you even say that?
No.
We have parallel lives, my ex. So just lies after lies, so many lies about me to his family and his friends. And slowly, as I talk to people, I'm like, he told you that? And then I give the truth, and they're like, I knew it didn't sound right, but you were so quiet. Like, you weren't trying to tell your side. So I was just like, oh, he must be telling the truth. Mm-hmm. So it's because I don't know how you felt, but it was just kind of like, I just didn't want to fight.
Yeah, like, I don't want to fight.
I was drained. You're lying to me about me. So I know, and it was the gaslighting. And then in my situation, there was financial abuse where like you're making sure I don't have any money. You're making sure I can't pursue comedy. You're making sure I can't pursue acting, because anything I can do to make me income limits the amount of power and control you have in the home. So you're doing it under the guise of, well, stay home with the baby so we can make sure we don't have to worry about that. In hindsight, it's like, no, it wasn't about the baby. It was about me not having anything of my own. So if I ever wanted to go somewhere, I can't because I can't
Yeah.
afford it. And even in the divorce, when I was like, I'm done, he filed first. That way he could, because he knew I would need to come up with the money and it was going to take me a while. So he wouldn't give me, that way I don't have an opportunity to save for one. He would say stuff like, you can't afford to beat me. So I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, that's very relatable.
Yeah.
Very
So
relatable.
fortunately, in your situation, you were able to, but it was like my son was 5. Like I'm scrambling because I have not really worked in this amount of time other than like a couple days a month, as a
Yeah.
hairstylist. So it was by design. Everything
Yeah.
hindsight was like, this was so on purpose. Even down
Yeah.
to in court saying I was an unfit mom, and the judge was like, absolutely not. Like
Yeah.
there was so many allegations, just foolishness, and
Mhm.
still are.
Mhm.
Still are.
Yeah. I always thought it was really weird, like how you're saying, like he put you in a position where you could never make enough money. It's like it was weird. He wanted me to make money though. Like he was the one that really pushed me because I was gonna take a break from real estate. He's like, you should do it. You should do it. And the only time that so there was one more date that he planned, aside from the breakfast, and it was when I got my real estate license. He took me out to celebrate. And I was like, oh, that's nice. But looking back, it's like he wanted me to be able to make money so I could support him, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just crazy because like anytime that I brought up like, oh, hey, like I really need you to pay me back for X, Y, and Z, he's like, I don't want to owe you anything. I don't want to owe you anything. But here we are, a year later, like I've been gone for almost a year and like, you still owe me a lot and you're not doing anything to like make it right. And it's so hard because it's like I know there's a kind person in there and like and I could see us being like good friends and co-parenting, but like he's so hurt, like he's so damaged and it pains me. And like I want him to be happy. I want him to heal from his traumas because like he deserves that. But everyone deserves to be healed and have a good life, but it's like he's so hurt and
He won't
he doesn't
allow himself.
he won't allow himself. And
It's
I
more
don't
about hurting you than healing himself. I'm
Yeah.
in the same situation. He wants to hurt me so much. He doesn't care about his own healing. And I'm like, when you realize if you heal yourself, it makes the whole situation easier
Yeah.
because you'll stop holding on to anger and resentment. Like it makes life so much easier because he makes certain things hard for me, but he can't make my life hard because I refuse to hate him.
Mhm.
As much as I should and could, I just refuse. I don't
Yeah,
want to
me
deal with
too.
him,
Me
but I
too.
refuse because hating you takes more energy than just letting you go.
Yes, it does. And I don't even
Just
really
let it
like
go.
talking to like, and when you're going through it, you talk a lot to your family members and your friends about what's going on, but I stopped and I started saving it for therapy because like, my family gets angry about it and then they'll say things and they may like call him names or do kind of, and I'm like, I don't want any of that energy. Like I'm not out here being like, oh, this pussy ass bitch nigga. Like, no, like that's not who I am. I've never been that way. Like, I just want to like wash my hands and move on. And because we have a son together, now we have this co-parenting plan, like I'm going to see him
Yeah.
every other weekend. And I want those experiences to be pleasant. And it sucks because I just feel like I can't genuinely be myself, like because I don't know whatever I say that day, what's going to be held
What's gonna
against
tip you
me,
off? Yeah.
you
Same.
know?
Same. And they just don't see that they can't even see that you're doing nothing or being nice. I'm the first to say it. I'm never nice. I just do nothing.
Yeah.
But they can't even see that she's not responding.
Yeah.
I've responded twice and it was just I had enough. Like enough picking, enough lying. I've responded twice in about to be 5 years. And it's just like you can't even see I'm not responding to you because you're so filled with hatred. And the hatred is fueled by his mother, who is the most hateful person I've ever in life. I'm going to do a whole episode on her. she's the most hateful person by admission of her own family, his father, his sister, like every person around them, just hateful. And I remember being in therapy, and the therapist was like, dude, what is wrong with your mother? Like, she needs to be here, and y'all need to be here together. And it sounds like his father is kind of the same vein with his mom, where like, y'all both need to be sitting here. And I remember we went to therapy, and at our last session, my therapist was like, you need to leave. He looked me in my face with him sitting next to me and said, you need to leave.
Wow.
And I did not listen. It took me like another year or two. No, it's like 2 years before. And every time something would happen, I would hear that. And this was a guy and his wife. He was like, you need to leave. And I remember he was so angry when we left that day. He was ticked off. He was like, how dare he? And I just sat quiet because I knew he was right. But my child is like 1. You know what I mean? So I'm like, oh, I can't.
Yeah.
You need to leave.
Yeah. I remember when my mom came to visit and my sister came to visit at one point after my son was born, and my grandmother would come over and like babysit every once in a while. And I remember it was like the night I was moving out and I was taking a break and I was just sitting on the couch watching some TV, and I'm like, I'm in a good spot. You know, I'm like watching some comedy and I'm laughing, and he sees that I'm laughing. So he comes in there and he starts a conversation with me. He's like, oh, you're having fun? Let's kill that. So
every birthday, every girls' weekend, every time there was, oh, you're about to go do something you enjoy. Let me stop it. It never stopped it, but it definitely like, you got to change your mood before you go do whatever it is. So
yeah, like I would tell him I was going on trips and stuff, and he'd be like, oh, you didn't, like, I would like literally write it on the like refrigerator calendar. He'd be like, oh, once again, you're going out of town and you never told me. I'm like, text you about it, wrote it on the calendar. And then there would be some text during my trip. There was a problem, you know, and he would like text me something to just, you know, so I know that he's mad, and then he would radio silence. But yeah, so this night he brought up how like, oh, you know, I wish that you would come and talk to me about how you're feeling instead of your family, because I've noticed how people treat me when they come here. I saw how your sister and your mom were looking at me, and how you're like, he like created this whole thing in his mind of everyone judging him. And at that point, there wasn't even much that was being said to my family members. They were just observing how he was, and they didn't like it. Like when my sister and my mom came, they didn't like that he wasn't around. You know, he was never there, and they didn't like what they were seeing. I didn't have to say anything to them, you know, and it's me bad mouthing him, you know. It's like, you can't take any accountability for your own actions.
I'm noticing between all the ladies I've talked to so far, like a parallel of they shift the blame to your side, because it's almost the same for everybody, where they do everything right, and then one day it's like, and when they switch, it's your fault.
Yeah,
because you need to be doing this, you should have been doing that. Of course, some cases are more extreme than others, but I think there's not a lot of acknowledgement being given to, because men always say, I'm tired of y'all saying people are narcissism. I'm tired of the word gaslighting. Well, it happens
all the time.
It is a
and not
real
just
thing.
in relationships either.
Friendships, at work, coworkers will gaslight you into feeling like you're nothing.
Yeah.
So it happens. I've never had a coworker do it, but I've seen where I'm like, why are you letting them talk to you like that? When I worked in a corporate setting, like, why would you let them talk to you like that? So it happens. It's not just relationships, but I think I read a study yesterday that was like 1 in 20 people is a narcissist. Yeah. 1 in 20.
It's actually 1 in 10.
No more than 20 people.
I think it's 1 in 10 actually. Well, not narcissists, but 1 in 10 people either have some sort of personality disorder.
See, so there's no way, it's not made up that pretty much every woman has a story of some degree of something. And every man, because of course there's way more men telling their story about the women they run into, but there's a reason everyone has a story, pretty much.
Yeah,
probably 99% of the population has a story of a horrible person they ran into. Now, how long you kept that person in your life is a different story. Like me now, the first time, bye. Like there's no way. Since my ex, bye. At the first, you don't get to do it again.
Yeah,
I'm done.
there's been a couple of men since my ex that have expressed interest in me, and I, explored it because I was interested, and then those
Absolutely.
flags, no.
Yeah, it's no longer Six Flags at all. I'm not excited about the ride.
Yeah,
Not
not
at all.
not going on the Batman ride, not going on the Super, not going on the Riddler, definitely not going on the Riddler. I do enough mental gymnastics.
It's Confederate flag. No, thank you.
Yes,
Get away
yeah.
from me. So yeah, those red flags, I'm not turning them green. I'm not turning them yellow. It is full stop right now. I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting off the ride. There's just
Mm-hmm.
no way. I was just recently talking to a guy. We had a really bad argument. Well, I shouldn't say argument. We had a disagreement, and he said something, and my brain went whoop. And I said, "Thank you. You have a good day." And I hung up, and I was done
Mm-hmm.
because there's no way. Because it was too early for you to be like in the talking phase. It's too early for you to. So I was like, you know what? Been down this road. I know how this ends. It just progresses and progresses. No, thank you. So I was telling my therapist, I was like, I need to see, and I think a lot of women should, what in their personality am I missing to even get to that flag? And it could be
Mm-hmm.
nothing. It could be some people just come with a representative and then something happens and you see it.
Mm-hmm.
Or is there something they say that I like? Like I'm doing that work.
Mm-hmm.
So we just started like 2 weeks ago. So I was like, I want to figure that part out. And she was like, it may be nothing. It may just be early enough that came out. And this time you know to go.
Yeah. That's something that I've been noticing too. Because when you're in that traumatic relationship and then you're coming out of it, you're learning how to trust yourself again because you're in this environment where you're second guessing everything. And then I imagine you're probably an empath like me where you feel a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes you're picking up on things that don't even belong to you. You're picking up on other people's energies. And so like I had to get back to remembering how to like pray for protection. Like I was in this before I got into this relationship, I was in a really good place where I was like learning how to like pray and meditate on protecting my energy and like asking like God, universe, source to like only allow me to feel my energy and don't let negative energies come in and affect me. I don't want to pick up anything that doesn't belong to me. And I forgot to do that. And so getting out of that relationship, you're feeling these things. And there's been a couple situations where like I was aware enough to feel that something was off, but I didn't follow through on like, maybe I shouldn't be here, or maybe I shouldn't be interacting with this person. Especially those feelings of like not feeling welcome or feel in a place where you feel like you can't be yourself. And if you're going to be yourself, you're going to get like reprimanded for it. Like that's kind of what I'm learning right now. And it's hard because it's like I've had to kind of like let go of like, certain situations and relationships and business relationships, friendships, stuff, because it's just not like aligning. And I'm feeling something in my gut and I'm ignoring it because like, I value that person or that situation or whatever. And it's like, I don't want to cut someone off. But at the same time, it's like, you really do have to protect your peace and your energy because people have other things that are going on in their lives that they're not willing to acknowledge or realize that
Yeah.
isn't like, healthy for them,
Absolutely.
and
And
it's
I
hard.
don't need your unhealthy stuff with my unhealthy stuff. Let
Yeah.
me work through mine. I can't take on
Yeah.
yours too. And I wish more people would work on theirs because I'm
Yeah.
doing the work on my side. Therapy
Yeah.
on Thursdays.
Yeah.
Go talk to somebody because your
Yeah.
friends aren't enough. Your friends are who you talk to in the days leading to therapy to just release. They can't walk you through it.
Exactly. And so like I've been better about listening to myself. There's been times I've gone to like events and things like that. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not feeling safe here. I don't feel like I can be myself here, or I feel like I'm being judged or whatever. I think it's time for me to leave. And just like learning like how to listen to myself like that. I'm such a recovering people pleaser that I realize that there are times that like I would be too afraid to interrupt someone because I have to go to the bathroom and then I'm holding my pee because I don't want to be rude. And I'm like, why am I doing this to
You're
myself?
harming yourself for the health of someone else.
Yeah. And I'm like, I need to stop. And so just little things like that I've been working on, and it makes a huge difference for when those big things come up, you know?
See, I've never been that person, a people pleaser, but I'll just let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned I'm not gonna just let it go.
Yeah.
Like I'm I just, even with my ex, I don't just let anything go anymore. No, I won't be mean and nasty like him, but I'm going to let you know, absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no more. Like, we've
Mm-hmm.
been divorced, no more. And even in that situation with that guy, I was like, I'm going to say how I feel, and then good day, sir. Like,
Yeah.
I no longer just sit, because I would just literally, my ex would be going off, and I'd just be like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've
not
been there.
yeah, like I'm not going to try to please you and be like, oh God, please don't be angry at me. No, I would just sit and be like, whatever, like,
I
get
would
it off.
freeze. I would like free like, and I think that comes from my childhood because my grandmother had this abusive girlfriend when I was growing up. I didn't know it was her girlfriend at the time. Like they just made it look like they were roommates, but she was abusive, verbally abusive. And growing up around that, I realized that it made me afraid of confrontation. So when people start heightening their voice or yelling,
That is me.
I
That's
just
why I just get
freeze.
quiet.
Mm-hmm.
No, I just get quiet and let you work through that on your
Mm-hmm.
own. And then if you
Mm-hmm.
want to talk about it after you work through it, well, I used to be open. Now, the minute you yell, I'm just like, because I feel like once you start yelling at me and you realize I'm not going to respond, I feel like that makes it easy, especially if once you do it and I say, hey, I don't like that. If you don't immediately feel like crap about it, you're like, well, this is how I talk. I'm not being mean. This is just me when I'm upset. Well, I'm telling you that being just you does not work for me.
Yep.
So if you want to talk about it, we can talk about it, but not in that tone and not at that volume.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I say that to you and you immediately make an excuse to try to make me accept it, that's going to be a pattern. I see that as something you're going to want me to do forever. You're going to want me to accept you doing certain things to me. And to me, it's not even just that. My mind goes to everything. Now you're going to say, this is just me about everything. And I date older. So they're definitely set in their ways, 50 years
Mm-hmm.
old. So you're not going to care that I said, I don't like when you yell. I don't have a father that yells at me. My dad is not a yeller.
Mine
Like,
either. Mm-mm.
he's a come here, let me tell you where you messed up at, and then
Mm-hmm.
you let me know how we go from here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only thing I'm willing to accept.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be moments where you get upset with your partner, but all that yelling and screaming, no, baby. I'm not.
Yeah.
I've done my share of going through that and just sitting and suffering through somebody acting a donkey. I sat through my ex-mother-in-law acting a donkey, lost a baby to her acting a donkey. I'm not doing it again.
Yeah. 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 Good for you. Yeah. I did get a little bit of yelling on my mom's side because she's Italian.
Oh, my mom was a yeller girl.
Yeah.
Black woman
Yeah.
used to lose her
So
crap.
I try not to yell at my kids, but every once in a while I do. But yeah, like
Yeah, you lose your cool. It's
my
normal.
dad was not. My dad was very much like yours. Like, sit down, let's talk about this. Like, I knew when he was mad because he would get real quiet, and his eyes would go bloodshot, and he'd be like,
No, my dad,
"Sit down."
I don't think I ever saw him angry except the one time he whooped me when I was like 7, and I
Mm-hmm.
deserved it. So to this day, I don't, man, I earned it. And that was the first and last time because it hurt my feelings so bad that he actually did it. Because I'm his baby girl, even at 42, about to be 42. So when he
Yeah.
actually whooped me, I was crushed.
Oh, I
Like, I
bet.
was like, oh my God, you really got a belt. Like, you really did it. Because he would always say, if you ever do, it's one day I'm gonna have to spank you. And I'm like, yeah, right. He never had to spank me again. That I straightened up and flew right for the rest. But my mama, I made that lady lose it every 5 seconds. It was
Yeah.
just hindsight is funny, and me and my mom laugh about it. But we were oil and water, man. It just did not work. Did not work.
Yeah.
But is there anything you'd like to say to women that have listened to either of your stories that you'd like them to look out for, things that you missed or things that you did see and you just let go of that you'd like to encourage or discourage?
I mean, I encourage all of you out there to just trust your gut. If there's something that you feel you're like, something's not right here, like pump the brakes, take a pause, explore. what is coming up for you, especially when you're triggered, because those triggers are our emotions. Our emotions are a spiritual guiding system for us. We're feeling it for a certain reason. So I think it's really important to just take a beat and pause and explore that and figure out how you want to move forward. It's okay to have autonomy. It's okay to change your mind. Don't let anyone try to coerce you into making a decision that you don't want to make. Make sure that you're making that decision because it's what you want to do.
Perfect. Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing both of your stories. I hope someone learned something and that they were able to take away in their own situation. If you need to get out, get out. If you can get out now, don't wait. If you don't have the resources to get out, reach out to family and friends, local companies. I know in certain cities, like there's women's shelters. Reach out. All of them aren't a shelter where there's 40 women sleeping in one big room. Some of them actually have bedrooms. So use those resources around you. If you feel unsure or unsafe with the decision you're being asked to make, or you're being rushed to make a decision, sit with it. There's a reason they're rushing. There's a reason your body is screaming, do not, or maybe not listen to your body, because we have something called intuition and it works more often than not. Is it wrong sometimes? But most likely if it is, it's past trauma that's leading you to doubt your voice. But when you know something doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. So listen to that and go with it. Thank you for coming on. I'm going to close out the show. Again, this is Lexis Sharday. Be on the lookout for her comedy. Support her if you see her. Oh, did you ever open the club?
Not yet. So it's operating as a pop-up. So I do, multiple events and looking at some locations right now. It's been a journey, but I know the timing will be perfect when it happens. So
perfect. So good luck to you and your children and on your new journey. And when you open the club, book me. I'll be there.
Yes, totally.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
This has been another episode of the Nightmare on X Street podcast. Thank you for listening in. Again, if you need resources for therapy, dial #988 on your mobile device. They will be able to counsel you one time, but from there, they can give you resources in any city, in any state in your area. If you need immediate assistance, please dial 911. Reach out to your family and friends to help you get out if you're in a situation that is unsafe. Again, all stories here are told at the discretion of the storyteller. We are hoping that they are true in the things that they say. If not, just enjoy it. Be encouraging. There may be some truth in the myth. Don't discount anything that is